You're watching the number one podcast in the YouTube wrestling community, and I'm your host, Jean Paul Leek, and this is Rope Break. Family, here we are, Thursday morning, New Year's Smash Day 2. Was it a good show? Was it better than New Year's Smash Day 1? Was it better than NXT? Let's find out. But before we get into the review, like always, I want to thank all the new subscribers. I want to thank all the Rope Break family for sticking through us through the tough year of 2020 into 2021. We really appreciate it. And we're going to keep growing, keep giving you guys the best content that we, always deliver. So check out, speaking of great content, check out Monday Night Raw Review with myself and Juan. We have that on the channel, Randy Orton, Alexa Bliss, the whole Drew McIntyre not being there with COVID and all that stuff. So, check out that review. And then we also have the NXT review from last night as well. We saw the start of the Dusty Classic, MSK, my boys, the Rascals, in the treehouse there on NXT now. So, really good stuff. Hopefully they make it in the finals of the Dusty Cup. And we also got hints of Karrion Kross, and we're going to see Finn Balor versus Pete Dunne. So pretty good stuff in NXT, but let's get into New Year's Smash AEW. And this opened up with a pretty good match. It was Eddie Kingston versus Pac. And, of course, Eddie Kingston had, the Butcher, the Blade, the Bunny, all out at ringside with him, and Pac had the Lucha Bros. So you knew there was going to be some craziness going on, and of course there was. But it was really good because Pac is one of the best, wrestlers, one of the best workers, best just. You look at Pac and you're like, yeah, he's a wrestler. He's one of the best guys they have on AEW, and Kingston ain't no slouch either. I think he's good, for what he is, and but you knew his goons and everything were going to get involved, which they did. But to skip towards the end of this thing, they're battling on the top rope, but Pac hits a superplex followed with a basement drop kick, and then he hits the Black Arrow for the win. So after a long match, he hits the Black Arrow, so the right winner there. Pac wins it. But then after it, he kind of gets the brutalizer on him, and then everybody starts coming in, beating each other down because, they had a promo before this as well. So Pac really wanted revenge for everything that Eddie Kingston was doing. He's like, you tried to tear us apart, Death Triangle. He's like, I saw when, you brought them all together and you winked at the camera. He's like, who the hell were you winking at? He's like, you were winking at me. So, he called him out, all this stuff. So he was the right winner because he should be, challenging for singles gold. So after this, the factions, they stare each other down, but Lance Archer comes in and he kind of, scares away the heels, I guess you could say. And then Archer, him and Pac, they kind of like jaw at each other. I didn't really catch what Lance Archer said. He kind of just mouthed off at him. So then you got to see maybe that's going to be the next feud, Pac versus Lance Archer, which, I'm down for seeing a match between those two. So good opening match, right winner with Pac. And then we see Chuck Taylor versus Miro. And if Miro wins, Taylor will be his butler until, Kip and Sabian's wedding, or the day after, whatever. He'll be the butler up until, the day after the wedding. So, and I don't think Miro had a stipulation where if he lost, he was going to be something for Taylor. And this is all, Trent, I guess he's a torn bicep or something. So he's out, 4 to 6 months. So, that sucks for Trent. I think he's the best out of all three, Chuck Taylor, Orange Cassidy, and Trent. I think Trent's the best, but so that sucks that he's out. Hopefully it's 4 months versus the 6, but this was really good. Miro, Rusev, whatever you want to call him, he's legit. He's the same thing. You look at the guy and he's legit. I don't like when it comes out wearing the Gucci, sweatpants and the Mickey Mouse t-shirt and all that shit. But, when he's wrestling and he's in that zone, there's not really anybody who's more legit than him in AEW, I feel. So he kind of turned his back on Chucky in the beginning of this, was like, he's bullshit. So then Chucky kind of used that and took the advantage and, really started beating him down in the beginning of this match. But then once, things kind of calmed down, Miro was like, okay, fuck this, back in control. He hits a Samoan drop and then a flurry of strikes, a suplex, and then he applies the camel clutch and wins. So and so it should have been, let Chuck have that little bit of a momentum in the beginning. Miro, is just like, screw that, and he wins. It wasn't a long match, and that's how it should have been. You got to make Miro look dominant. And then after that, we get Dasha Gonzalez. She's with Matt Hardy and Private Party. Try saying that 10 times fast. Private Party seems enthusiastic about Hardy being their manager, but they take issue with the 30% clause in the contract, and they start arguing. Matt Hardy's like, hey, you should have read the fine print. I'm just teaching you guys a lesson. He's like, why are you worrying about money now? And he's like, if you guys stick with me, you'll be making millions and millions throughout the years. You don't, what's this 30% now? Does it mean anything? And they're like, well, what do you mean we worry about money? You're the one who's taking 30% of our money. You're a money grubber, blah, 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 all this stuff. So we'll see where this goes because they're going to have a match together next week. So they'll probably lose, and that'll be the split. And it was like, what the hell was the point of even putting them together to begin with? Because you didn't accomplish anything with them together. So then we get the Inner Circle. They make their way to the ring. Jericho promises a huge year for the group. And he's like, what are some of your New Year's resolutions? Because that was the whole point of this, the Inner Circle's New Year's resolutions. Hager says, I want titles. And he screams at like a freak, just like the kid in the back of the short bus. And it's like, okay, that's even with Jericho was like, okay, like, whatever. And then MJF says he wants, the group to just continue to grow together and, work as a unit. So he's really trying to schmooze them over, be like, oh, yeah, let's all, kumbaya, when, MJF is just using it for his own gain. And then Ortiz, he wants to perfect his grandmother's recipes. I believe he said sufritos was one of them. So, that was legit. And then Jericho says that his resolution is that he wants to win the AEW tag titles with MJF. So Santana cuts him off, and then he begins to imply that, he brought in Proud and Powerful to be the tag team of the Inner Circle. They were the ones who Jericho was going to help win the AEW tag team. Jericho was going to help them win the AEW tag team championships. And he's like, it's not supposed to be you. It's supposed to be us. That's what you said. And then Sammy interrupts, and he's like, hey, sorry, Santana, but I just got to say this. And he calls Jericho a tag team slut. And, he's like, first you were with me, we were Les X gods, then you were with Jake Hager, now you're with MJF. He's like, what the hell's your deal? So then everybody starts, yelling at each other, going crazy. So next week we're going to see a match to determine, I guess, who the tag team of the Inner Circle is. So Santana and Ortiz, Proud and Powerful, going against Sammy and Jake Hager. Sammy Hager, ha ha ha, and going against then Jericho and MJF. So I could easily see Jericho and MJF winning just to further the storyline of, we have our heads so far up each other's ass, we could smell we'll be last New Year's bash. But this segment was okay, just because I think if this eventually leads to the breakup of the Inner Circle and you have Sammy Guevara, Santana, and Ortiz doing their own thing, in the singles division and in the tag division as baby faces, then I'm good. Because I think at this point they're baby faces and all the other guys are heels, or just, you got Wardlow, who's not involved in this at all. He's just pissing up a rope. So we'll see where they go with this. Then we get Alex Marvez. He's with the Dark Order. And, he's like, oh, we had the tribute show to Mr. Brody Lee. So now, what's next for the Dark Order? And Evil Uno says that next week Hangman Page will team with the Dark Order, and they're going against that's the one. They're going against Matt Hardy and Private Party. And Hangman, they're like, oh, bring him in. And, they kind of like shove him over in the group, and he still has his drink, and he's like, and everything. And, the Reynolds, he wants to know when he'll let them know about his decision to join the Dark Order. And then John Silver, the little guy, what do they call him? The meat man or something like that. I always call him the Hornswoggle on steroids. He's like in love with MJF. So, no, I'm not talking anything bad about the tribute show to Brody Lee, but the Dark Order was legit on that night. And then we go to this show and they're back to the same goofy bullshit. Like, we said we really wanted to see maybe them do the Dark Order right and portray these guys legit, but at least John Silver is acting like a retard. But, you have, what is it? Alex Reynolds, who I like, out of the two of them, he's at least, more serious. So we'll see. I easily can see the Dark Order winning this match. Private Party, like I said, that was a complete waste doing all this with Matt Hardy. So then we get Dasha Gonzalez. She's with Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. Don Callis suggests letting the Young Bucks have their own entrance, because Omega's like, oh, should we do the 3 thing where we all come out together as the Elite? And he's like, no. I like their entrance. I like the music, everything. He's like, Kenny, you come out by yourself. They'll come out together. It'll all be legit. So then we get Kenny Omega and we get the Elite, versus Brian Pillman Jr., Griff Garrison, and Danny Limelight. So Kenny Omega, he makes his entrance. Don Callis gets on the mic, and he's like, oh, I'm going to introduce Kenny Omega's two best friends, the Good Brothers. So then we see Carl Anderson, Doc Gallows, they come out. No Young Bucks. So, commentary's like, oh, this is bullshit. Impact is just trying to take over. Don Callis, the Invisible Hand, all this other stuff. And you see a shot of Tony Khan and the Young Bucks in the back, and they're like, what the hell? This is bullshit. Shivani's trying to just, make fun of Impact. He's like, yeah, they have a pay-per-view coming up, Hard to Live or something like that. It's like, Shivani, just, calm down. Hard to Kill is going to be pretty good compared to a lot of stuff that AEW does. So, let's just hold your horses there for a second. But this match was all right. Limelight, I thought, looked really good for a guy I've never seen or never heard of. He was really impressive in this match. Got a little bit of offense in on Carl Anderson, Doc Gallows, and Griff Garrison and Brian Pillman Jr. I think are really good. But there's no story. There's no pushing them. If we would see a video package on Brian Pillman Jr. saying, oh, my dad was in tag team, Hollywood Blondes, and, I'm really, maybe following that path to eventually lead to a singles run like he had, and just say, what his dad meant to him, what, the time he was able to spend with him and everything. But no, okay, Brian Pillman Jr., okay, we're just, if you don't give these guys stories, we can't get behind them. So that's kind of the problem with a lot of people in AEW, but that's a story for another day. But like I said, this match was pretty good, but you already knew who was going to win because we never see Griff Garrison, Brian Pillman Jr. ever win, and I don't think Danny Limelight was going to be the deciding factor in this. So at the end of this thing, the action all breaks down. Anderson connects with a Mafia kick on Garrison for a near fall. Anderson then hits a spine buster on Limelight, and the Good Brothers follow up with a Magic Killer for the win. So then after the match, Jon Moxley, he comes out to confront Omega and the Good Brothers. Moxley eventually falls victim to the numbers game, but the Lucha Bros, they make their way to make the save, which I didn't really understand. I'm like, aren't they in this other feud with Pac and Eddie Kingston and Lance Archer and all that other stuff? But then you're like, oh, okay, well, I know Phoenix had a match with Omega and everything, so I guess it makes kind of sense. So they come out, everybody starts brawling, staff runs in, separates them. The Young Bucks try to calm things down. The Lucha Bros super kick them. Commentary was like, oh, there's maybe still some animosity between these two teams. I was thinking they probably think that the Young Bucks are still friends with Omega. So they're like, anybody who's friends with Omega is an enemy of ours. That's how I would have sold it. Not, oh yeah, they still don't like each other from, years gone by. And, it's like, I don't know. That's how I would have sold it. But so, everybody starts brawling and everything. And then you just see Don Callis and Omega. They kind of slip out of there undetected. Like, let's let all these fools fight. We can go sit in our private bus. So, decent stuff. So we'll see where they go. I don't know if they're trying to turn the Young Bucks babyface now. I don't understand. That's the confusing part because, you were building them as heels and it didn't really go so well, but you stuck with it. And then now you're going to try to flip-flop to babyface. I would respect them more if they just stuck with no, we're going to keep them as heels, but we'll see where they go. Then we see Reba. She welcomes us to the waiting room. And this is kind of like, you're sitting in the waiting room of the dentist's office. So that's all this was because it's like a sit-down talk show with Brit Baker. So Brit Baker, she's like, oh, everybody in the audience, look under your chairs, making fun of Oprah. They reach down. She's like, haha, there's nothing. Screw you. Subscribe to Rope Break. So, thanks, Brit Baker. And then she's like, no, we're introducing our first guest, Cody. So they play his music. He comes through the door. They circle him with some sparklers. They're like, oh, contractual obligations. We need to have pyro every time Cody comes out. Again, taking another dig at Cody. And she's talking to him, oh, congrats about you and Brandy for the baby, even though she's like, I'm sure your kid will have an action figure before me. It's okay, though. Like, I understand how this works. And Cody's like, oh, yeah, probably, So I love Britt Baker. I love how she just gets digs at Cody because, hey, that's a woman from my own heart. Anybody who takes a dig at Cody. So, she makes fun of him. She's like, oh, I don't know how, this guy can be all these celebrity judges on the Go Big show. And then randomly Cody Rhodes. She's like, that doesn't make sense. Just like his neck tattoo. So, really making fun of Cody. And then she's like, oh, before she can really ask him anything, she's like, oh, I forgot. We have another special guest, Jade Cargill. So Cargill comes out, and she says that Shaq and her are tired of waiting and that she wants an opponent because Brandy's out of here for 9 months. So she's like, this is bullshit. I'm asking for an opponent every week. I'm waiting. You're supposed to be the boss around here. So where's my opponent? So then Red Velvet, she comes in, she interrupts, and then they exchange some slaps and everything, and they start all brawling. And then we see a video package of Thunder Rosa. She announces that her match against Britt Baker will take place at Beach Break on February 3rd. Britt Baker was losing her mind, freaking out. She's like, this is bullshit. Like Tony Khan said, I don't have to. I don't know why you're making me do this, all this other stuff. So this was good. I'm really looking forward to this. Britt Baker, to me, is one of the stars here on AEW, so this will be a fantastic match. Then we see FTR going against the Jurassic Express, and this time in the Jurassic Express is Jungle Boy and Marco's son. And this is obviously, stemming from last week. And, well, I guess the previous couple of weeks, they kind of had a little bit of a feud going. So this match, I really enjoyed it just for the fact that they beat the shit out of Marco's stunt. And it wasn't like, oh, he was just selling, doing a really good job. No, I mean, when they were punching him, kicking him, spine busters, suplexes, power bombs, all that, it was like, the Road Warriors beating up a job guy. Like, you know what I mean? Marco Stunt earned his paycheck last night. Let's just say that, because they beat the shit out of him. But eventually, he tags in Jungle Boy. Jungle Boy, he's the real star of this group. He's I think, has so much more upside than Marco Stunt has zero upside. But, he's a lot better, more upside than Luchasaurus. He's the star of this team. So he got some offense in, looked pretty good. At the end of this thing, Jungle Boy, then he hits a brainbuster onto Cash, but almost gets rolled up by Dax. Dax levels Marco with a lariat, but Marco responds with an ace cutter. Tully Blanchard, then he kind of he takes Marco's stunt, throws him into the ring post on the outside. The ref didn't see it, and he was distracted. And then Jungle Boy, he comes over to kind of like almost like clothesline Tully Blanchard, but he ducks it or do something to Tully, but Tully ducks it. I'm not sure if it was Cash or Dax, but they take out Jungle Boy. Then they roll back and throw Marco's stunt back in the ring, and they hit the Big Rig, which is their new finisher. They renamed after Brody Lee. So they hit the Big Rig on Marco for the win. 1, 2, 3. But like I said, this was a pretty decent match. Long match, almost 13 minutes, so good stuff there. And we closed out the show with 2 championship matches. The first one being Serena Deeb versus Taya Conti for the NWA Women's title. And this was really good. Serena Deeb, I think, is fantastic. I said her and Thunder Rosa, the 2 best wrestlers on AEW, and they didn't even, they weren't even signed to AEW when they wrestled their first matches here. So what does that tell you? But Taya Conti, I think she's getting better. She looked all right in there. There was a couple spots where I don't know if they were selling it, like she was just frustrated, but like they would do a move or do a spot, and then she would just stand there and kind of look at Serena Deeb with this like look on her face, like, like, oh, like, but it was almost like, what do I do next kind of deal. Like Serena was clearly leading this entire match, but she still didn't look too bad in there. I like when, Ty Conti has the Brazilian jiu-jitsu and all that stuff, like the submissions, like, she just kind of pulls them out of nowhere sometimes. So that's good. But Serena Deeb, like I said, saw this thing. She really carried it. At the end of this thing, Conti hits a stunner for a 2 count. Deeb finds, some life, makes a comeback with a gut buster. She then applies a gory special in the ropes. Conti connects with a bicycle kick, but Deeb answers with the detox for the 1, 2, 3. So good stuff there. And Anna Jade gets in the ring. She's like, Ty Conti, it's legit, blah, blah, blah. We'll just post on Patreon. Everyone still loves you. And then, Serena Deeb is looking at him. She's like, I don't need Patreon or OnlyFans. You're bullshit. So, holding up the title. So good stuff there. The next week, we're going to see the Inner Circle 3-way tag match, like I had mentioned. And then we're going to see Matt Hardy and Private Party versus, there we go. I had that wrong. Excuse me. We're going to see Matt Hardy, Private Party versus Matt Sydal and Top Flight. And then we're going to see Hangman and the Dark Order versus the Hybrid 2 and Chaos Project. There we go. I was getting the matches mixed up. Excuse me. And then we're also going to see Nyla Rose versus legit Layla Hirsch. So legit, right after Rope Breaks Own Heart. And then we're going to see Jon Moxley in action as well. So it seems like a pretty decent episode next week for Dynamite, but I don't think it'll be as good as this one. And then we see, the main event, the AEW Dynamite, or the AEW TNT title match in that Darby Allin going against Brian Cage. And this was really good. this match, a long match. And they, the refs were like, we don't want all Team Taz out there. We don't want Will Hobbs. We don't want, Taz being down there. If Brian Cage wants some people there, it's fine. So they had Hook and Ricky Starks were down there. Taz was on commentary. No Powerhouse Hobbs. So, but this was good. At the beginning, pretty much at the beginning of this thing, Darby, he charges him, takes out the leg stuff, tries to get a little bit of offense, but, Cage eventually, obviously the size of this man, like they said, over 100 pounds, weight difference between the two. He eventually takes control. He grabs Darby and just chucks him through the announce table. And this announce table, like, obliterates. This thing, like, explodes. I don't know if it was made out of, like, glass or if they, like, pre-broke this table. What the hell obviously not made out of glass, but, it just, this thing exploded. This was a great spot. If you didn't see it, go look it up. It was awesome. You gotta, Darby Allin's crazy. Some people don't like the violence, the ECW bullshit, some people, whatever, they want to see legit stuff. But I mean, this was awesome. You got to look this up. But, so then Darby, he was busted open. I don't know if he was busted open from that spot or if when he was down there, he just, bladed himself or whatever. But this was really good. And then to kind of go to the end of this thing, but not too far to the end, Cage suplexes Darby back into the ring. Darby then kicks out of the cover at 1. They battle on the apron. Darby knocks Cage off the apron and onto the ring steps, and then he follows up with a coffin drop onto the ring steps. Another good spot right there. And then in the ring, Darby hits a stunner and uses the belt to tie his own belt, not like the TNT Championship. He uses his own belt to tie Cage's legs together. Darby then hits a code red onto Cage as he's undoing the belt. And I love when he hit the code red. Excalibur said code red. That's Dustin's finisher. And then Tony Schiavone goes, "Oh, I've never seen a move like that." Really? You haven't seen any of Dustin's matches on AEW? So there we go. But then Ricky Starks, he gets involved. And then they crotch Darby Allin on the top rope. As soon as he does that, the lights go out. You already know who it is. Sting comes down, but he didn't just stare at everybody. He actually got involved, did a little something. He takes his bat, boom, knocks out Starks, hits him in the gut. So Starks is out of there. And then Darby hits a crucifix bomb from the middle rope onto Brian Cage to retain his title. So, like I said, this was a good match. Again, about 13 minutes long. And snow starts falling. Darby Allin celebrates, with the belt. Sting just kind of stares on. He doesn't go in the ring and, and celebrate. No, he just kind of stares. Darby Allin retains in a good, hard-fought match. So that was, AEW Dynamite New Year's Bash Day 2. I thought it was good. New Year's Bash Day 1 wasn't bad. This show was, wasn't bad either. There's a couple stuff, like I said, the Inner Circle, I feel like they're just, it's one of the things where they're just pushing it along because they're like, oh yeah, it was legit. I mean, I can't stand when you have the fake crowd, which is made up of your roster, marking out for Jericho when he's supposed to be a heel. That, I think is stupid, but like stuff with Brit Baker is always good. The main event match was good. FTR looked good. I love the Impact crossover. Like I said, I'm more excited for Omega and all that on Impact versus then Omega on Dynamite, if that makes any sense. But this New Year's New Year's Day or New Year's Bash, whatever it is, Day 2 was a pretty good show. So I'm looking forward to next week. We'll see how they can follow up. But guys, that was a review. Thank you so much for watching, and of course, make sure you follow us on Rope Break on Facebook, the original Rope Break on Instagram, the OG Rope Break on Twitter, and of course, the home of the #1 podcast in the YouTube wrestling community. Click subscribe on the original Rope Break, and also turn on all that bell for notifications, and so you get the little update every time we upload. We upload every day, multiple times, some days, and today will be one of them because we have AEW Dynamite here in the morning, and of course, we're going to have the best show in wrestling, NXT UK, coming to you later this afternoon. So thank you so much for watching. We only have one thing left to say.